Hello and welcome to the Protograf channel. Just a reminder, Protograf is a software tool that allows you to create cards, tiles, counters and boards for board games, as well as being extendable for other kinds of graphic design. Today's tutorial is just about getting started and how to get set up and have Protograf working on your machine. We're going to jump right in to the terminal, but before we do that, just a reminder that you need to have a package called UV installed on your machine. This is on the astral.sh site. There's a guide to installation methods, both for Mac OS and Linux, and also for Windows. It's a very straightforward installation. On my machine, which is a Linux machine, I already have UV installed. I can check it by typing UV and pressing enter. It gives a whole bunch of information, none of which is really relevant for us, so I'm just going to clear that out the way. As I said, we're working here in the terminal. You should find such a program on any operating system. On Linux it's built in, but also on Windows as well. It might be referred to as the command line or the PowerShell or other terminology specific to your machine. So we know UV is working. Next step then is to go ahead and install a virtual environment containing Python. We need Python in order to be able to run Protograf scripts. So UV is going to create a virtual environment, VNV for short, which we are going to name, not very originally, Protograf. That's going to create a directory in the place where we located, and inside that virtual environment we're going to install Python, and the version we need is 3.13. I'll type that in, press enter. It shows that it has created Python 3.13.2. We can ignore the 2 or 3 or anything else at the end. It's created a virtual environment which named Protograf as requested, and it also tells us that we can activate that environment. So let's go ahead and do that. Again, putting in that command, pressing enter. So the change that you can see in this terminal is that it appends this Protograf in the front, so that tells us we're working in a virtual environment. And now if we type just Python, it will activate what's called a Python shell, and that's identified by the correct version, the one that we've installed, and those 3 angle brackets. But we're not going to spend any time here, so let's leave that. The next thing that we need to do now that we have Python installed and working in a virtual environment is to install Protograf itself. So UV can help with that, and we're going to use a tool available in Python called pip, Python installer for packages, and the package that we're going to install is called Protograf. So UV runs and installs a lot of other packages as well that Protograf is dependent on, and one of them you can see there is Protograf itself with whatever the current version of the tool is that you're using. So that's good enough for now. We need to see if Protograf is actually active and working, and to do that we're going to have to type a script. So I'm using a tool called gedit. If you're working on Windows, a tool like Notepad++, which is freely available, is a good one to use. And on Mac OS, I'm sure there's similar good tools for doing text editing. The important thing is not to use a word processor, but to use a text processor. We'll have to put the script somewhere, so I've created a directory under the TMP parent directory called proto. That's where we are, And in here I'm going to go ahead and create a new document, which I'm just going to call test, and I'm going to give it a .py extension. It doesn't matter too much what extension you use, but it's pretty helpful to let your operating system know that you are creating Python scripts. So I'll do that, and then I'm going to open that script in my text editor. So there it is, line 1. It's a blank script. So that's clear here. So let's change to that directory. On Linux it's a cd command, but type in whatever is needed for your particular operating system. And now I can use Python to do what's called running a script. That's the jargon. Python run the script. You don't ever type in run, but you just type Python and then the name of the script that you want to run, which in our case is test.py, and nothing happens. Well, that's not completely unexpected, because in fact the script is empty, so we would not expect much to happen. So how do we get going then with protograf? The first thing we need to do is make the protograf tools and functionality available to our script. So the way we do that is from protograf import star. Star here means just get everything. There are ways to refine this, but this is a good start. We'll save that. Let's just try and run it again to see if anything does happen. And there is no change. The test.py is still here, and there doesn't appear to be any other change. However, nothing went wrong, and that's always a good sign when you're writing scripts. So now we need to dive into protograf itself. The way protograf works is you type in a series of commands, and you might enhance those commands with things called properties, and then when the script runs, Python will interpret those commands and generate your output. So how does this work in practice? Well, the place that every script will start will be with the create command. So just the word create. It is has a capital letter at the start, followed by lowercase letters, and ends with 2 brackets, round brackets, open and close. That's the format that you'll see for all commands that are given to protograf. In some cases we're going to use lowercase names, but for now let's just stick with the basics. And then every script will end with a save command. So this is a little bit similar to perhaps a word processor. You click on a new command to create a new file, and at some point you need to click on save to save that and generate some output. So those 2 commands, between them, are enough to do something. Let's test that. Save it in the terminal. Going to rerun my Python test script. And now if we look in our file browser, we see that in fact a test.pdf file has been created. To view a PDF file, you will need a PDF viewer. Many operating systems have one built in. Otherwise, there are many available, some free, some with a cost attached, that you can install. I'm just using a basic viewer that's built into this version of Linux that I'm running. So if I double click on that, I'm just going to drag this across here, and it doesn't look like much, but what we have here is a blank page, roughly 2/3 in size. So this actually corresponds to an A4 page, and that's the default page size that protograf works with. That's not very exciting, but it does indicate that protograf has worked, it has done something, and it's generated an output. So those are all important steps. Just before this tutorial ends, we'll just go ahead and add one more command in. That's called the deck command. I'm not going to go into any detail, but as the name suggests, it's a placeholder for setting up a deck of cards. And to see what it will actually do, as before, we can type Python test.py, execute that, And now you can see this grid of what you can imagine would be cards, or at least the outlines of cards. In this case, the default card size is that of a poker, roughly 9 by 6.5, and it's slightly offset from the edge of the page by 1/4 of an inch. So in 3 steps, if you ignore the import step, in 3 steps we've managed to create a PDF output that is the basic structure for the design of a deck of cards. That's where we'll end today. In the meantime, goodbye and good scripting.